Beth and Rip finally found the weapon they need to destroy Bula once and for all? Or are they walking straight into a trap that could cost them everything? After the heartbreaking events of episode 4, tensions are higher than ever. Carter is hiding dangerous secrets, Rip is making unexpected moves at Ten Petal Ranch, and Bula may be closer than anyone realizes to uncovering the truth about Beth and Rip's past. But perhaps the biggest question of all is this: what happens when two people who refuse to lose finally decide that peace is no longer an option? Episode 5 could completely change the future of Dutton Ranch, and some of the clues hidden in the trailer are far more shocking than they first appear. After everything that happened in episode 4, I think it's safe to say that Beth and Rip have reached their breaking point. Losing so many cattle wasn't just a financial disaster, it was personal. Those animals represented years of work, sacrifice, and dedication. Watching them be destroyed because of a disease that never should have reached the ranch left scars that aren't going away anytime soon. And what makes the situation even worse is the fact that Beth and Rip now know somebody set the entire thing in motion. The discovery that the Bulls' records were falsified completely changed the story. Up until that moment, it seemed possible that the outbreak was simply a terrible accident. But once the evidence pointed toward deliberate deception, everything became much darker. Suddenly, Beth and Rip weren't dealing with bad luck anymore. They were dealing with an enemy. That's exactly why their confrontation with J.R. Simon felt so important. Even though they didn't take his life, they made sure he understood there would be consequences. Blowing up his home wasn't about revenge alone. It was a warning. It was Beth and Rip telling everyone involved that they were no longer willing to sit back and absorb the damage. However, I don't think J.R. Simon was the real target. In fact, I believe episode 5 is going to reveal that Beth and Rip have already figured out something much bigger. The way they reacted suggests they know Simon was only a small piece of a much larger operation. Somebody supplied the infected bull, somebody falsified the records, somebody made sure the disease reached Dutton Ranch at exactly the right moment. And the question that continues to bother me is simple: who benefited the most? When you look at everything that's happened so far, one name immediately stands out: Bula. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean she personally organized the entire scheme, but it's impossible to ignore how much she gains from Beth and Rip being weakened. Every animal lost pushes Dutton Ranch further into crisis. Every setback creates opportunities for her own plans to move forward. That brings us directly to one of the most interesting moments from the episode 5 trailer. We see Rip arriving at Ten Petal Ranch and immediately taking control of the situation. He's giving orders, he's speaking with confidence, and perhaps most importantly, he doesn't look afraid. Think about that for a moment. This is enemy territory. Most people would enter that environment cautiously. They would watch their backs and avoid drawing attention. But Rip appears completely different. He acts like someone who already knows something the other side doesn't. That's why I believe Rip isn't arriving there to negotiate. I think he's arriving there to recruit. Over the last few episodes, we've seen several signs that not everyone at Ten Petal Ranch fully trusts Bula. Some employees seem loyal because they have no other choice. Others appear frustrated with the direction things are heading. And if Rip can expose even a fraction of the truth behind the cattle outbreak, those cracks could become impossible to repair. Imagine being one of those workers. You dedicate years of your life to a ranch because you believe in the people running it. Then suddenly you discover those same people may have orchestrated an attack that destroyed another ranch's livelihood. Even workers who support Bula could begin questioning where they stand. And that's where Beth becomes incredibly dangerous. Because while Rip is building relationships on the ground, Beth is gathering information. The trailer gives us a major clue when she talks about digging into Bula's past. That single line might be one of the most important hints we've received all season. Beth has never been the kind of person who attacks without ammunition. She studies people, she learns their weaknesses, she waits patiently until she finds the exact pressure point she needs. Then she strikes. If Beth has decided to investigate Bula's history, there's a very good chance she's already found something. Maybe it's connected to Levi. Maybe it's connected to Everett, or maybe it's a secret we haven't even heard about yet. Whatever the truth is, I don't think Beth is searching for information anymore. I think she's searching for proof. And once she gets it, the balance of power could shift dramatically. The title of the episode, Peaceful Find Peace, sounds almost ironic when you think about everything that's happening. Nothing about this situation feels peaceful. Every storyline is moving toward conflict. Every character seems trapped between loyalty and survival. Beth and Rip want justice. Bula wants control. Joaquin wants approval. Carter wants freedom. And when everyone wants something different, peace becomes impossible. That's why I believe episode 5 marks the true beginning of the war. Not a physical war, not yet. A war of secrets, a war of manipulation, a war where information is more valuable than money, and trust is more dangerous than any weapon. And if the trailer is any indication, Beth may already be preparing the first major attack. The real question is whether Bula sees it coming. Because if she doesn't, episode 5 could deliver the biggest power shift we've seen all season. While Rip appears to be taking the fight directly to Ten Petal Ranch, I think Beth is preparing a move that could be even more devastating. The reason I say that is because Beth has never relied on strength alone. She wins by understanding people better than they understand themselves. She finds the one secret they desperately want to protect and then uses it at exactly the right moment. And right now, Bula is surrounded by secrets. The biggest clue comes from her emotional conversation with Everett in episode 4. For the first time all season, we saw a completely different side of her. This wasn't the confident and intimidating woman who always seems to have complete control over every situation. This was someone carrying years of regret. The moment they mentioned Levi, everything changed. Both of them became emotional almost immediately. Neither wanted to say much about what happened, but the pain was obvious. That's why I keep coming back to the possibility that Levi was their son. If that's true, then whatever happened to him completely changed the course of their lives. Maybe it destroyed their relationship. Maybe it pushed Everett away. Maybe it became the reason Bula built emotional walls around herself and never truly trusted anyone again. What's interesting is that Beth doesn't necessarily need to know the full story. She only needs enough information to recognize that Levi is connected to Bula's greatest weakness. And if Beth discovers the truth before anyone else, she suddenly gains leverage over a woman who normally cannot be controlled. But here's where things get really interesting. What if Bula already knows Beth is investigating her? Think about how smart Bula has been throughout the season. She didn't build her influence by making careless mistakes. She survived because she learned how to stay one step ahead of everyone around her. So while Beth may believe she's secretly digging into Bula's past, there's a chance Bula is quietly watching the entire thing happen. That possibility makes their upcoming confrontation even more exciting. Because when we see them facing each other in the promo, it doesn't look like a normal conversation. It looks like two master strategists trying to figure out how much the other person knows. Every word matters. Every expression matters. Every tiny reaction matters. One wrong move could expose everything. And honestly, I think Bula makes the first attack. The reason is simple. Bula has spent the entire season gathering information about Beth and Rip. Back in episode 2, we saw her showing interest in John Dutton's death and several other suspicious events connected to the ranch. At first, those scenes didn't seem particularly important. Now they look completely different. What if Bula has been building a case this entire time? What if she spent months collecting evidence and connecting pieces that nobody else noticed? If that's true, then Beth may be walking into a confrontation where Bula is holding far more information than anyone realizes. Imagine Bula placing evidence on the table. Evidence linking Beth and Rip to crimes. Evidence connecting them to violent incidents from the past. Evidence capable of destroying everything they've built. For a brief moment, it could look like Beth has finally been cornered. But that's exactly why I don't think Bula wins this encounter. Because Beth always has a backup plan. Whenever it seems like she's trapped, she finds a way to shift the pressure onto somebody else. And that's where Bula's hidden secrets come back into the story. Instead of defending herself, Beth may immediately launch a counterattack. She could reveal information about Levi. She could expose something involving Everett. She could uncover financial secrets, personal betrayals, or mistakes Bula has spent years trying to bury. Suddenly, the conversation changes. Instead of Beth being the one under pressure, Bula becomes the person fighting to protect her reputation. And that's when the Cold War truly begins. Not because either side wins, but because both sides realize just how dangerous the other one really is. The most fascinating part is that neither woman can afford to destroy the other completely. At least, not yet. If Bula pushes too hard, she risks exposing herself. If Beth pushes too hard, she risks drawing attention to her own secrets. So instead of launching an all-out attack, both of them may choose something much more dangerous: patience. They may decide to wait, to observe, to search for an even bigger weakness. And whenever two powerful people start playing that kind of game, innocent people usually get caught in the middle. That's why I'm becoming increasingly worried about Oriana. For most of the season, she's been caught between two worlds. On one side is Bula, the woman who raised her. On the other side are Beth and Rip, who seem to understand her rebellious nature better than anyone expected. Episode 4 showed us something very important. Beth actually started liking Oriana. That may not sound significant at first, but it changes everything. Beth doesn't trust people easily. The fact that she sees something of herself in Oriana means she may become protective of her. And if Beth decides Oriana deserves better than the life Bula is offering, she could start pulling her toward Dutton Ranch. That would be a nightmare scenario for Bula. Because losing workers is one thing, losing influence is another. But losing family, that's a completely different kind of defeat. The trailer doesn't reveal much about Oriana's role in episode 5, but I have a feeling she's becoming far more important than most viewers realize. She may end up being the connection that links every major storyline together. The conflict between Beth and Bula, the growing instability at Ten Petal Ranch, the future leadership of both ranches, and perhaps even the secrets from Bula's past. As the episode moves forward, I think we'll see both women trying to gain control over the same people while preparing for a larger battle that neither side can avoid forever. And by the end of episode 5, the relationship between Beth and Bula may be beyond repair. Because once secrets start becoming weapons, there is usually no way back. While Beth and Bula are busy preparing for war, I think the most dangerous storyline in episode 5 may actually belong to Carter. And the reason is simple. Unlike the other characters, Carter isn't playing a strategic game. He's acting on emotion. He's chasing freedom. He's trying to prove that he can make his own decisions. Unfortunately, that kind of thinking often leads people directly into trouble. Episode 4 gave us several warning signs. At first, Carter's actions didn't seem like a major problem. Skipping school and working at another ranch might sound harmless compared to everything else happening in the story. But when you take a closer look, it's clear the writers are building towards something much bigger. The moment Carter started keeping secrets from Beth and Rip, the situation changed. Because trust has always been one of the most important themes in Dutton Ranch. When characters start lying to the people who care about them, consequences usually follow. And judging from the episode 5 trailer, those consequences are arriving much sooner than anyone expected. The biggest clue is obviously Carter's arrest. For a brief moment, we see him being questioned, and his expression says everything. He doesn't look confident. He doesn't look prepared. He looks like someone who suddenly realizes he is trapped inside a situation that's much larger than he ever imagined. The question is, what exactly happened? Personally, I think the answer leads directly back to Dwight's ranch and the leopard. Ever since that animal was introduced, it has felt like a disaster waiting to happen. Nothing about the situation seems stable. A dangerous predator, an irresponsible owner, and a group of people making increasingly bad decisions. Those ingredients rarely lead to a happy ending. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if episode 5 reveals a shocking accident. Imagine Dwight spending another night drinking heavily. Imagine him becoming careless. Imagine him believing he has complete control over an animal that was never meant to be controlled. All it takes is one mistake. One moment of overconfidence, 1 second where everything goes wrong. And suddenly law enforcement is investigating a tragedy. If something like that happens, Carter could immediately find himself at the center of the investigation. Not because he's guilty, but because he was there. Because he worked at the ranch. Because he knew the people involved. And because circumstances have a way of making innocent people look suspicious. But there's another possibility that may be even worse. What if the leopard itself isn't responsible for the disaster? What if authorities discover the animal was imported illegally? If that happens, someone will have to take the blame. And based on everything we've seen from Dwight, I don't exactly trust him to accept responsibility. In fact, I could easily imagine him pointing fingers at Carter. He might claim Carter handled paperwork. He might claim Carter arranged transportation. He might claim Carter knew far more than he actually did. Desperate people often make desperate choices. And if Dwight feels his future collapsing around him, sacrificing Carter might seem like the easiest way to save himself. The tragic part is that Carter won't see it coming. He's still young. He's still learning who he is. And despite everything he's been through, part of him still wants to believe people are honest. That innocence could become a major weakness, especially if he's suddenly forced to defend himself against accusations he never expected. Meanwhile, Beth and Rip are dealing with problems of their own, and that creates another serious issue. Normally, Carter would run straight to them for help, but after lying about school and secretly working elsewhere, he may hesitate. He may worry they'll be angry. He may believe he has to solve the problem himself. And that's exactly the kind of decision that often makes things worse. One bad choice leads to another, then another, then another, until suddenly the situation feels impossible to escape. What's fascinating is that Carter's storyline may end up affecting the larger conflict between Beth and Bula. Think about it. If Beth becomes distracted by Carter's legal troubles, she has less time to focus on Bula. If Rip is forced to protect Carter, he can't fully commit to whatever he's planning at 10 Petal Ranch. Their attention becomes divided, their resources become stretched thin, and their enemies gain opportunities. That's why I believe Carter's arrest isn't just a personal storyline, it's a strategic problem, one that could weaken Beth and Rip at the worst possible moment. But perhaps the most emotional part of all this is the growing distance between Carter and the people who consider him family. For a long time, Beth and Rip have fought to give Carter a better life. They protected him, supported him, believed in him. Now they may feel betrayed, not because he made mistakes, but because he chose to hide those mistakes. And that difference matters. Families can survive failure. What often hurts more is dishonesty. The trailer suggests that difficult conversations are coming, conversations that may force Carter to finally confront the consequences of his decisions. The good news is that Dutton Ranch has always been a story about redemption. Characters make mistakes, they lose their way, they face painful consequences. But eventually, they find a path forward. That's why I don't think Carter's story ends with an arrest. I think the arrest is only the beginning. The real story will be watching how he responds when everything starts falling apart. Will he finally take responsibility? Will he trust Beth and Rip enough to ask for help? Or will he continue trying to handle everything on his own and make the situation even worse? Whatever happens, one thing seems certain. By the end of episode 5, Carter's life may look completely different than it did before. And if the trailer is telling us the truth, he is about to face the biggest challenge he has ever encountered. While most fans are focused on the growing conflict between Beth and Bula, I think there's another character quietly moving toward a breaking point. And honestly, by the end of episode 5, that character could be more dangerous than anyone else. I'm talking about Joaquin. For most of the season, Joaquin has felt like someone trying to prove himself. He wants respect. He wants responsibility. Most importantly, he wants Bula to trust him. But despite everything he's done, that trust still hasn't fully arrived. And episode 4 made that painfully clear. When Bula discussed the future of 10 Petal Ranch, she revealed something that probably hit Joaquin harder than he was willing to admit. Even though she wants to retire, she still seems more comfortable waiting for Rob Will to return than handing complete control over to him. Think about how frustrating that must be. Joaquin has been there. He's been loyal. He's handled problems. He's stood beside Bula through one crisis after another. Yet when the conversation turns to the future, she still hesitates. She still doubts him. She still looks elsewhere. That kind of rejection has a way of changing people. At first, they work harder, then they become frustrated, then eventually they start asking themselves,